Hello.
You start a video for once. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So today we're doing a video. It's my husband. If you are new here, my name's Jessie. We talk about all things lifestyle, wellness, financial wellness, kind of just anything around that. But we recently did something that I had a couple of people ask some questions on Instagram about. So I wanted to do a video over here, but what do we do, Benjamin?
We bought a car.
So anybody that's like a Dave Ramsey fan, in fact, I just looked up videos like right before this to see if anybody else was talking about this. And there's like 100 Dave Ramsey videos that are like, buying a car is like the worst thing to do if you're in debt or blah, blah, blah. So just a little backstory, we have had a Chevrolet Trax. If you know what that is, it is a very small, like very, very small SUV that I purchased a few years ago and put out a loan on it because I was moving to Chicago and I needed a more reliable car. So it's a very small car. I love it. But with more than one of us in it, it started to kind of show its space limitations. So even with our dog Cora, or like driving, back and forth from the Midwest to Raleigh, you cannot fit much in it. But at the time it was totally worth what it was, right?
Yeah.
So we decided recently that we're going to just start paying attention to cars. We weren't going to buy anything new. We weren't going to lease anything, but we just wanted to start paying attention to what was out there in case we found something. Benjamin and I really wanted a Jeep Grand Cherokee, or I really want an Audi Q5.
Yeah.
Beautiful cars, very expensive. If you're going to get them in our price range, you're either going to get like the absolute lowest model, and or you're going to get one that is, has like way more miles than my current car had, which was, I think my current car when we traded it in had 65-ish thousand miles on it. So it wasn't bad, but we didn't want to purchase a car for more money that had more miles on it.
Yeah.
So insert when we found our current, what we found.
Yeah, and when Jesse says in our price range, what she means is something that, like, she's had the car payment on her Trax.
Yeah, I had a $300 a month car payment on my Trax. I think there was still like $7,000 left on the loan or something like that. So
yeah, so we were looking for something in that area.
Oh, something that was also very important though was keeping a very similar interest rate, because my interest rate on my car was very low. It was like 3.5% or something. And a lot of the cars, we had went and looked at a Jeep a few months ago and it was like a 5 or 6% interest. And I was like, I don't want that. So
yeah. So I think probably the first thing to address is, why would you buy a new car instead of just trying to pay yours off? Because that's kind of Dave Ramsey's model. And just like in general,
drive
if you have
till it dies. Yeah,
if you have a ton of debt, the idea is to get the debt off your plate, not incur more. So our reasoning behind that was essentially, like Jesse was saying, the car is small. And could we have continued to make it work? Yes, probably. But with us traveling back to the Midwest, us doing little weekend trips and stuff around here, which is one of the reasons we moved here, it just really didn't make sense to keep that. Also, with the car being at 65,000 miles, we had been pretty fortunate in that we really haven't had to do any major repairs or anything on it. It was going to need new brakes soon. We had to replace a battery, but like, we're talking
tires last year,
but we're talking stuff that's like a couple $100s here and there. It's not anything big. Anybody that's had car troubles, like, and Jesse has in the past with having like a lemon, like, you can put thousands of dollars into a car like that. So,
and a lot of time, like having a car that was always an issue. Like I never felt safe, just because I felt like at any time my car could break down, my car could overheat. I wouldn't, I would need to go somewhere and I wouldn't be able to go. So it's just like almost that, like your time, what am I trying to say? Like
your time is money.
Yeah. Like the time that the amount of time that I spent stressed or having to go get my car fixed or something like that, that equals money as well.
Yeah. So with all that, we just decided that it wasn't going to make sense for us to try to keep this, because eventually we are going to incur more costs because the car was aging. We were going to have to put money into it, and you never know these things, right? But the potential for larger things to go wrong with the car would continue to increase. And so we knew that we would be having to spend money on that.
I also want to say, for me, that wasn't the biggest reason to get rid of the car, was that it could incur issue. Like, I knew that that was a possibility at some point, but I'm also not one of those people that's like, okay, I need to get rid of my car as soon as it hits 50,000 miles because I might have to pay for something. It definitely wasn't to the point of being like a lemon or any issues with it. But it was something, just a consideration, I think, is what Benjamin's trying to say. It was like a consideration in the overall thought process of purchasing a new car.
Right, because from a number standpoint, the argument could be, well, why would you upgrade your car instead of keeping it and trying to pay it off?
Right. Well, also, like, for me, the biggest reason was the size and the power, which you kind of mentioned. So, like, driving in and around Raleigh, in the hills, anytime we wanted to go somewhere outside of Raleigh where there are mountains or hills, my car was just, like, not handling it. But size, to me, was the biggest issue, and not necessarily an issue today, but eventually and soon, which ties into that piece of, like, at that point, the car was probably going to start to have some issues that were going to need to be changed, right? So
yeah, and the thing that goes hand in hand with that is when we had it appraised, the value is actually quite good for what we expected, and so we wanted to act on that too. Before that went down too much more in and of itself. Yeah,
I think it's like every 10,000 miles or something like that, the value of the car starts to depreciate more. Something once it gets above 50,000 miles. But yeah, so like knowing in the next few years we're probably going to have kids, knowing in the next few years we might get another dog, knowing in the next few years we're going to be going back and forth to the Midwest safely and in a car, so we didn't have to like rent a car when we went home or stuff like that. It made sense to make that decision and change now if we found something that fit in our budget of under $300 a month, under 4% interest, and had things like all-wheel drive, was newer, had less miles on it, was bigger, and we felt safe in it. And so we were kind of in this space where we would occasionally look at like Carmax or different places like that to see if there were anything that would pop up. I started being served ads all the time, so I was constantly sending Benjamin cars, but we really weren't interested in looking until we found something that fit all those boxes perfectly, because we weren't in a place, thankfully, where we needed a car. We had a car, it worked well, it was fine. If we needed it for a few more years, we would be fine with that. So
yeah, I think the other thing too is that there was still, $7,500. There are just over $7,000 left on the loan.
Yeah, at the time, yeah.
So I think, at least for me, it probably would have been a little bit different if we were, say, $1,500 away from paying it off or something, right? Because then I would have made a much bigger push to be like, okay, well, why don't we just try to pay it off, and we can go without that car payment then for as long as possible. And then I'd be much more apt to be like, okay, let's drive it into the ground, or at least until we can. But since we were still, quite a ways away, that option just wasn't going to happen soon anyways.
That's a good point. And if you guys have seen any of our previous driving down debt videos or our finance videos, it wasn't even anywhere close on our debt snowball either. We have always, because my car loan interest was so low, we weren't going to pay that off until we had paid off all 4 of our consumer debts. So we were going to pay you know,
which ain't happening
$30,000,
tomorrow.
yeah, $30,000 worth of debt, and then we would hit the car payment,
Yeah.
and then we would do something else. So
Exactly.
it was going to be a few years before that happened. And I will say, like, it was scary, and I was really nervous about it. I had a really hard time that day when we sold my car and then purchased this car because, well, first of all, I didn't want to give up my car because I loved my Chevy Trax so much. But also, it was scary to go from having, $7,000 of car debt to adding, more to that was going to go to our overall debt. So our overall debt changed. But yeah, so we added more money to our overall debt, but we actually lowered our car payment. So our car payment our interest is really only...
It was 0.5% more than it was.
More, so nothing
It's like
crazy.
just under 4% now.
Yeah, it's like 3.8 or something like that. So nothing crazy, but our car payment went down $50 a month, which will be helpful. And I know most people would say, like, keep paying $300, your normal thing. But for us, we actually need that $50 to put toward our regular budget right now as we're kind of like ramping up our income, which is a whole other video. But so that's been really helpful, or will be really helpful once we start paying on that. But we were able to get a newer car under 12,000 miles, bigger, all-wheel drive, and less of a payment. So that was kind of like that perfect storm we were looking for. That would be the only way that we would purchase a car.
Right.
And again, too, we're a one-car family. We don't go anywhere really where we would need 2 cars since we both work from home. So we're thinking about things like, in the next few years, what type of car do we need that can hold kids, can hold more stuff on road trips, all that kind of stuff. And my Trax just like wasn't going to do it. It was really hard when people would come to visit and I'd have Cora with, or we'd need, even just 3 people in the car, honestly, was kind of like a clown car. But I will say, if you're one person or even 2 people and you want like a starter SUV, I loved my Chevy Trax. So we ended up just upgrading to the bigger Chevy Trax. So we just got the Chevrolet Equinox, and it's 2019, super nice, right? Yeah. Benjamin really, really loved it.
Yeah, I've really liked it so far.
Mm-hmm. It's not our Jeep. It's not our Audi yet. I want those, but we just got to the point where I was like, we want a really nice car, like a really nice Audi or Jeep. So there's no use in like buying like a lower grade one now, right? So this was kind of a good
or something with 100,000 miles.
Right. Yeah. So that wasn't
going backwards, essentially.
That wasn't in the plan for us, but that's kind of it. Do you have anything?
I think when you're in debt, no financial decision is an easy one.
Right.
So I think it's important that, like we share this. It's not like we just like went out and we're like, oh yeah, like this was great and this was easy and it felt really good to like start and, increase our overall debt a little bit more. That's not the case. It's more so being able to look at, and I think this is what we do, we kind of talked about it in our video that we did about like why we don't follow Dave Ramsey, but just understanding what our lifestyle is and kind of what fits us best. And just back to what we were saying, it's like, is this like on paper the ideal scenario and what you should do? No, but it fits our family the best, and it's something that is helpful to us in the short term, and just kind of improves our quality of life in the meantime while we continue to drive down the debt. Yeah. So that's the story behind why we purchased our new to us car, I should say, and what went into that decision and why we came up with what we did. But we're pretty happy with it. I would say I miss my car a little bit. I'm getting used to driving a little bit bigger of a car, but I know in the next like couple years, or throughout the next couple years, even when we go home this summer, it's going to be so much nicer to have. And it's already been wonderful driving around here and all the hills and stuff. It's
It's got a little bit more power. So that's been really helpful. But that is what we decided to do. Leave a comment down below if you've ever had to make a decision like this, or just like, I don't know, anything regarding cars. I feel like people are very like polar opposite. They either believe that you should buy a car or you shouldn't buy a car. And we kind of just went with what felt best to us.
Yeah, and I'd be curious too, just to get people's input on like where you're at on the scale of like us to Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
And just because he's
Zebra intensity.
Right. Yeah. Our intensity.
Yeah.
Just because he is so
strict,
anti car buying and taking on more of a debt payment.
Which is understand. I get where he's coming from.
Right. Like
it just
again,
didn't work
it
for
all
us.
totally makes sense. But yeah, so I'm just curious to get other people's opinions, if you've handled it similarly to us, or if you are somewhere in the middle, or maybe even if you just don't get it because you totally side with Dave.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. I try to put out at least 2 videos a week, so keep on coming back, but we will see you.
Yeah, come hang out.
Yeah, in the next video.
Later.